right, boys and girls, thank you for joining us once again for another thrilling episode of Carnivore Stories. Today my guest is Travis, and he's going to tell us all about his introduction to the carnivore diet, what was going on for him beforehand, how did he find out about it, what convinced him to try it, who influenced him, and what he's experienced since, basically. So that's enough talking from me already. Travis, tell us all about it.
Hey, Bart. Nice to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you.
Yeah, so I got into the ketogenic space back in 2012. I read a Gary Taubes book and did a little bit of keto over the years for about 5 years. Really enjoyed it. I wasn't really that overweight, but I did have a little post-college beer belly. And then in 2016 or so, I became a moderator on a large subreddit and was looking for ketogenic science constantly. So really, then I realized, I should make a Twitter account and get more in touch with the science community and see what they were posting. So I made one and started building a follower account. And then I found Sean Baker. And he had like an early video, like the N equals many study, where he was like encouraging people to try a 90-day carnivore diet. And this was back in the summer of 2017. So kind of before the Joe Rogan episode, before he really became like a household name. And so I followed him on YouTube. I did my due diligence, my research, and I was already pretty familiar with super low carb diets. So it was really just taking out the fiber and the vegetables, which was my question. And so I read a bunch of books. I read like Stefansson's Not by Bread Alone or The Fat of the Land. And that was like super convincing to me. And I found his studies from 1928. And there was also a Michael Goldstein had a website called justmeat.co. And I read a lot of the literature on that and actually messaged him and was like, hey, maybe I could add some more sources that I found in my own research. And then the Joe Rogan, Sean Baker podcast went live, I think in November or December. And we started World Carnivore Month in 2018 in January. And then we turned that Facebook group into World Carnivore Tribe. And I've been a moderator there for like the past 4 years, I guess.
I should have a word to you about that. I've been blocked on that site. I need to be unblocked there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Can maybe try and help you out there.
Apparently I'm a spam artist.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Anyway, sorry, carry on. That was a complete aside.
Yeah, so then 2018, World Carnivore Tribe kept growing, and at the time there was already the zero the zero carb Facebook group. So there was a lot of good research on that, but they weren't really trying to like explode in popularity. They just wanted to kind of promote the diet. So like World Carnivore Tribe was trying to like make it bigger. And then so a journalist joined in like that summer and asked about the carnivore diet, and I messaged her and was like, hey, I'm your guy, I want to talk about it. So we did a story in the New York Post, and then the next morning, the Good Morning America contacted me, and they basically came over the next morning, and we did a little, we filmed all morning basically, and I got my 2.5 minutes of fame that day. It aired that like Friday in July, and they crapped all over it right after, showing, why I did it and whatnot. But ever since I've been, I decided to make a website to kind of make my version of justmeat.co. And I started buying all the books on Carnivore and reading them, and then taking like the excerpts from them and putting them into a database. And my database now has almost 1,000 entries. And then I've got science. I've got a Zotero database with almost 12,000 entries. And I also helped on the Carnivore Harvard study. Sean and I were put in contact with through Nina Teichholz and David Ludwig. And we were just like, let's redo the type 1 diabetes study that they did in a Facebook group on type 1 grit. And we got 10 times as many responses for that. And I just checked, and that is the most read article in current developments in nutrition.
Awesome.
So it's definitely making an impact. And then in terms of my updates, I decided to get out of the tech career and get into this whole carnivore space in terms of academia. So now I'm doing a master's degree at Utah State University. We left New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for like a decade, and my wife and I just moved here. We're building a house, and this is like an agricultural college. So I'm in a meat science class. I'm butchering lambs and beef and watching harvest, and I'm in an advanced nutrition class and a clinical nutrition class. So I'm excited to maybe study the carnivore diet in a clinical setting. And I think it's really interesting. There's so many possibilities once we make this happen. So
awesome. So what, if anything, what was happening with your health prior to the carnivore diet? Was there some reason you thought, I've got to try this? Was there something off that needed to come right? What was the kind of precipitant?
No, I was already familiar with keto, so I've had allergies, I guess, over the years. So I've been open to changing my health. I would get angioedema where my lips would swell up, and that was really pestering me, and so like. I think I don't really know exactly what I'm allergic to, but I haven't had that issue happen anymore. And I realized, like, even when I was keto and stuff, I would be about 10 pounds heavier than I am when I'm at like my OMAD carnivore weight. So I definitely prefer being carnivore. And I've gone on and off it, sometimes I'll cheat here and there, but I feel terrible when I do, and it's always like a good reminder of why I'm doing this. So.
Yes, absolutely. All right, good. So, with all of that said, what are they teaching you in terms of the advanced nutrition? Is it the nonsense? Is it the dogma that you're going to get?
Yeah.
So, how's that going when you're in class and they're trying to ram this nonsense down your throat? How does that go?
Yeah, I'm pretty good friends with the teacher of that class already, just because I've talked to her a few times. But she's a dietitian, and our first chapter on macronutrients is on carbohydrates, and of course there's quotes like, "What's the most commonly eaten macronutrient in the world?" And it's carbohydrates, and they're also saying like the fructose consumption since 1970 hasn't increased that much, but grains and other sugars have. So we haven't gotten to the fiber thing, but we went through the digestive system. That was chapter 2, and I was asking questions like, so why is our stomach pH so low? Is that to digest meat and kill microbes and stuff? And they didn't really know that much. So
why is our cecum gone? Why have we only got an appendix that size?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But the book really didn't touch evolution at all. It doesn't really do any comparative anatomy with other apes.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned evolution here and there in certain classes, and it's like an alien word to them. They just don't want to talk about it.
I think people need to understand the very, very tight but subverted, not really spoken about connection between the Church of Loma Linda and the Dietetics Association.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why you won't generally hear dietitians talking about evolution, that's what it is, because there is a lot of Loma Linda money behind the Dietetics Association folks. So just out of interest for folks, that's kind of something that you need to be aware of. They don't overtly talk about it, but it's there. It's irrefutable. So.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of research on that, and did the research on like the 1863 Ellen G. White, her hallucination as a teenager, and then we can't eat meat, we have to be good for God and all that, and even that came back. That dates back to like 1817 when Christian Church moved from England to the U.S. And then there were basically like 50 years of vegetarian like propaganda that kept like increasing over the years. And then she got this, magical hallucination, and then she had this authority from God. And there's a really good book called The Vegetarian Crusade that discusses a lot of these topics. And I've added some of those excerpts to my database. And I need to finish doing that. It will take quite a bit of time because it's such a long and detailed book. But then in 1917, Lena Cooper co-founded the American Dietetics Association. And they were basically promoting a vegetarian diet, so that even by the time when Stephenson did his study in 1928, he was, pushing back against dietitians that were saying an all-meat diet would kill him.
Yeah. It's incredible the level of indoctrination, the repetition of a false message to the exclusion of the true and correct message, the silencing of folks who actually have the true and correct message. It's a real process of control and subversion of free speech and free thinking. It's an incredible process to watch. And it's the thing that gets me out of bed every morning. It's the thing that drives me forward to keep doing what I'm doing in the face of quite a bit of censorship and control of growth and popularity of what I'm doing on YouTube, for example. The shadow banning thing, all of that. When a carnivore channel gets large enough, they will look for excuses to outright ban that person, but until they do, they'll stop them from growing. That's not to say I don't have a particular style of presentation that is niche, shall we say. There will be
abrasive or something like that.
People have made all sorts of crazy accusations, like I'm abrasive and I curse too much and all this kind of stuff. I realise that's a very much niche thing. It very much attracts a certain audience, and it's a limited audience, but it still is a larger audience than what I'm allowed to sort of seem to get anyway. I do it with Melissa Forethought. We've spoken about this publicly a number of times. That's why I set up the other channel where I just wear a collar and tie and don't use short words at all. I just do the science over there. And that channel's got like 1/10 of the visibility of the one where I use short words. So it's amazing. People seem to be more willing to spend their time watching a channel where they think, something could go off here at any time and we don't know what he's going to say next and all of this kind of stuff, than a channel that's just about the information. People don't seem to be attracted to learning science and information and all of that. They want the abrasiveness, they want the subversiveness, they want the, all of that kind of stuff. And I don't know a way around it. I mean, this might be an area that you might know something about, Travis, that how a person would attract a large audience for just the information. You've got to have a hook of some kind, don't you?
Yeah, I think you do. I built a YouTube channel like 2 months ago, but I haven't really added to it. And I too am wondering, should I just like read out the entries that I've, collected from the last 200 years of, using a carnivore diet for obesity and diabetes, or should I try and, make reaction videos like Joey Schwartz is doing, and his channel is growing like bananas.
Yeah.
So, it seems like he's definitely struck a chord there.
Because he's got some inherent attributes that are going to be very, very useful to him. Number one, he's highly intelligent, clearly, obviously. Mm-hmm. Number two, he's not too hard to look at as a young man. Number three, he's a very, very young man, and people want to support that, especially because he's giving the right message out. I think it's almost like a custom-made field for him, and he'll probably get away with more than others might in terms of being able to get some leeway to say the truth to people. Plus, he's not running around cursing and carrying on like others might do. So, all power to him and great luck. Good luck to him. I think he's absolutely going to take the world by storm. And, I'm doing everything I can to help him do it. Absolutely. Because it's not about any one of us. It's about getting the message across to as many people as we can. So if we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, although we might be in slightly different keys to one another, somehow that still equates to some form of concerted effort, I think. And I think it's a win. So, I'm really glad that there are so many of us now who are spending as much energy as we are on trying to run against this current, this frankly evil current of people telling us to, change our diet in such a way that will absolutely destroy our health, and ignore all the science and all the observations that we've made over, as you say, 200 years that show us absolutely that we have been promoting the wrong diet to people for at least 100 years, completely wrong.
And it's like no one even cares. Like, we have such high rates of chronic disease now, and everyone's just like, this is the new normal. Get used to it.
Exactly. So the normalization of what is an abnormally unhealthy society. And, the sensationalists jumping up and down and look how bad our health has got as a society is one thing. But are we actually doing anything about attacking that situation and doing something about it? Well, you and I are, Travis. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Joey is. Yeah. You bet. Sean Baker is. You bet he is. All these people are doing something. What are these sensationalist journalists doing other than getting people like you on for 2 minutes in a heavily edited Vox Pop piece and then shitting all over you? It's amazing.
It was really like they recorded like an hour's worth, and I did so many like long answers where I was talking about all the science, and then they cut all of it out, and I basically just said it gives you more energy, like, and then they like quoted my wife, and she lost like a little more weight than I did. And I think she like really won the show there, but
rightly so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw your some of your interview or your viewing of Dr. Milton Mills, and that guy just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So I think the thing with evolution and like the diet argument is, if you argue with like the Seventh-day Adventists and they're saying, well, we were created by God just to eat grains and fruits and vegetables and whatever, and then we're just eating meat because it tastes so good. I think that argument is really easy to destroy because it's just like a made-up religion based argument. But then on the other hand, we've got if you do acknowledge evolution, then people are just saying, oh, cavemen just lived to 35 and then they died from random causes. Mm-hmm. So there was no adaptation to an all meat ketogenic diet at all. So, we would just expect you to get heart disease and, die off from some kind of chronic disease. And that just doesn't make any sense to me, because we have perfect, teeth, we have great arches. And then you're in this fast feast cycle of ketogenesis. And that just seems to be, there's new articles every day that are showing how excellent those signaling molecules are, and how they're giving alternate fuel to the heart. And we didn't introduce meat in like the last 100 years. We introduced linoleic acid and fructose and glucose in great volume, and that has to be at the role of our chronic disease. And it's just annoying that we have to have these battles. Even when we talk about evolution, it's like, well, okay, like what, are other animals just dying off because they're eating their naturally evolved diet?
Exactly.
It's like, no.
And then we have characters, like Milton Mills that you're talking about there, who is clearly, patently, absolutely metabolically disordered himself. There is no way around this. All you need do is watch a Milton Mills video and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm not allowed to mention it on YouTube because that's bullying, apparently. But the boy is absolutely metabolically unhealthy, no question. And he's standing up in front of groups of people and saying things like, we can't possibly be carnivores because we don't have sharp pointy teeth like this, and milk is racist though.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
And then he says things like, I'm a Christian, he says, but you should pull a gun on people that don't agree with you on diet. What, Milton? Huh? Yeah, sorry, you're going to say.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I don't know if he even believes in, he doesn't believe in evolution, and then he pretends like he does, and then says, oh, well, even if we, if evolution was true, we don't have claws and things, and we're obviously so stupid that we can't hunt. And, it's like, I really love Mickey Bendora's science, and how it just makes so much sense to me that we'd have access to all this high-fat megafauna for millions of years. And, we weren't starving. We weren't, trying to get meat. Meat wasn't a rarity. It was, the base of our diet. And plants would have been famine foods entirely, And even if you were eating tubers, it was probably to get water out of them, not to get starch or amylase.
Highly fibrous, not much starch was in those things. I mean, the starchy tubers that we have now are selectively bred to be that way over generations and generations. So, yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to pick up on the whole theology versus evolution so-called debate a bit, because it's a really interesting one to me. Always has been.
It is to me, too. I watch a lot of creation, evolution debates.
Yeah.
There's a good subreddit called Our Debate with Evolution. And, go ahead.
Cool. And the thing for me is this. Science can explain a lot. We can make some really good inferences on a number of things. We can be absolutely certain that several theories that have been put forward are absolutely valid and are consistent with our observation of the objective reality in which we find ourselves. One of those things that is objectively, absolutely, without question, beyond question, is the process of evolution by positive and negative selection of genes in a gene pool across generations. We've observed it happening in other animals. We've observed it happening in bacteria. We observe it happening in human beings on a slower scale than those other animals that live shorter lifespans, of course.
Right.
It is definitely in play here. This is not a theory. That when people say the theory of evolution, get out of here. Evolution is a fact.
Well, it's a scientific theory, just like
absolutely.
Theory
that said, that does not preclude the existence of a higher intelligence, a god, if you like, some kind of all-powerful, all-knowing being that set the process going in the first place. Because what science cannot do is explain the quantum fields. Why are they there? What explains what the quantum parameters of those fields are? Why do each particular individual particle have the weights and energies that they have and not slightly different from what they do have? Because if they were slightly different, then the whole fabric of reality would fall to bits. Things are as they are through the anthropic principle, which means they are as they are because they could not be any other way. But how did that start? Now, we've got this theory called the Big Bang Theory, which is funny because even if the Big Bang Theory is correct, it was neither big because it was at a singularity, and neither was there a bang because there was no air through for which sound could travel through. So the Big Bang is, pretty bad name for the thing, even if it did happen that way.
You can blame the Catholic that created it.
Yeah, that was right. There was a priest that came up with that name as a kind of a derisive term for the way that it looked like the physics was heading at that time in terms of the theories of the genesis of the universe sort of thing. At the end of the day, what we cannot do is explain why the universe is here and why it's made up the way it is. And it's entirely possible that some higher power said, make it so. And it was not Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise that said that, for example. So I don't think there's a debate to be had here at this stage. It's not one or the other. Both could simultaneously be correct. We know for a fact, we can observe for a fact that evolution is correct. No two ways about it. What we cannot do is say there is no God. There might be.
I kind of take a pretty strong stance on that idea. To me, gods are characters in books that people have written, created. And, I think most theists will say that, other gods are imaginary and people are making them up. And, either it's, imagination or some kind of demonic influence or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not my God, though.
Seems like
my God's not made up, just yours.
Yeah. So it's special pleading in that case, right?
Yeah.
And, we have 4,200 plus deities that, anthropology knows about, and new ones can be created any day. Anyone can create a new little cult. Mm. And, I like using the example of the cargo cult that were created in the 1940s. And, people didn't understand how planes worked. And they were like, oh, we can, reproduce planes on our mountaintop and build them out of trees. And, then the ancestors will come and visit us and give us presents and whatnot. And, it seems very clear that you can tell that that's a made up wrong religion. But the people there, they fully believe it, right? And so I think the real question that we have to ask ourselves is, why are people still believing things that we know can't be true? And evolution kind of answers this question as well. So we have these cognitive biases, these flaws, these confirmation bias, agency detection, theory of mind, all these ideas that basically show us that, people can be very certain that, deities or spirits or supernatural ideas are real, but, they're just falsely attributing real events in their life to these ideas. They're having coincidences. They're primed basically to believe these things. And, the other thing is childhood indoctrination works. I don't want to make a genetic fallacy and say that's the case for everyone, but, 80-90% of the time that is the case. People are just, doing some groupthink and believing what their parents said and whatnot. And I guess I could tie this all back to religion because, in our modern world, we've kind of forgot what the nutritional wisdom of our forefathers was. And now we just use marketing and school and, a few YouTube videos by dietitians and whatnot to build our idea of what we should believe. And you really have to go back and you have to understand and put everything in context and realize, oh man, I was taught all these lies as a kid, and maybe I shouldn't put faith into this idea that I can't falsify. And so I think if you kind of open your mind and you really question, was I taught everything? What was everything I taught? Is it true? How can I test against it and see? Like you'll lose many of your beliefs in deities, and you'll also lose beliefs in the power of seed oils and carbohydrates to keep you free of heart disease and diabetes and whatever else.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. That's the thing, and I think you're quite right there, Travis. I think people fail, and it's not just the general public. This is also scientists who actually should know better. They fail to take that step. They fail to take that responsibility that they have, and your responsibility as a scientist and as a member of the general public on anything you are told by anybody. It is your responsibility to attempt to do everything reasonable to falsify what you've been told. Mm-hmm. Especially as a scientist. If you don't take that step, if you don't say, right, let's find the evidence that this thing I've just been told here is false. If you don't do that, then you're going to fall into that trap, and you become a theologist. You become a theologist of the Church of Anorexia Vegana, for example, as underpinned by the great church of the ADA, sort of thing.
So that makes me, maybe because you're a professor and you've been in this field for a long time, I want to do clinical trials that basically test whether or not carnivore is legit and if it makes sense. And I want to test like the transcriptome and see if our genes are basically priming us to eat meat over plants. Do you think there's certain ways that I can test this, or do you have any ideas on how we can falsify our own?
Absolutely. I mean, you, like everybody else, is stuck with the fundamental pre-existing problem of attempting to do human nutrition science. Mm-hmm. That being that,
I know you called it quackery.
That's the thing. You have to undertake short-term reductionist intervention studies on human beings that are probably going to be highly underpowered. They're definitely going to be under-tenured because you cannot extrapolate long-term health prediction from a short-term study. That's ridiculous. You cannot do it. What you also cannot do is keep human beings under lock and key, under control and observation in an experimental setting for decades to follow their health outcomes. That is not ethical, it's not practically possible, and it's certainly financially never going to occur. So that what we're going to be stuck with experimental, actual science-wise, is short-term, underpowered reductionist studies on some aspect of input and response physiologically, and not hard health outcomes. Or, if you want to look at hard health outcomes, then you're stuck with epadiddly-doodly, middly-moodly-mology, which is completely uncontrolled, totally without discipline, and the furthest thing from science that it's possible to be, especially considering what you do is collect all this data on your observations on associations between X and Y, and then you throw those numbers over your shoulder into the ash can and make some other different ones up and publish them instead. Adjustment.
Right.
What we're missing is that area somewhere in the middle of those two extremes, hardcore science that informs us on X versus Y short term a bit, in a properly scientific disciplined way, and garbage. We need something in the middle. That's where we should be aiming, I think, but the practicalities of getting it happening, the finances and the ethics are always going to be quite high hurdles to get over, I think. And as such, if you want to be a scientist in human nutrition, you're going to be stuck, I think, with a career where you are basically justifying your own existence by making out like your short-term reductionist science is of utility in the real world. which it may be on case by case. There might be the odd finding that you'll come up with that changes the way we view things and helps our understanding of the likely overall package of things. But it's unlikely that any one given scientist is going to find that one thing. You'll be able to have a career, but will you actually be able to change the world? Who knows?
Well, that's my goal. I suppose I can definitely do like short-term 3 to 6 month trials, maybe of carnivore for various diseases like Crohn's or digestive illnesses, mental illness, bipolar, things like that, right?
Yeah, symptomology studies.
Right, and then I could also kind of do more in-depth versions of the carnivore harbor study. Survey, really.
Yeah, survey, let's be right.
Survey like really long-term carnivores who've been doing it 5, 10, 15 years.
How about 39?
How about 39, right? Like that guy.
Richard Rodriguez.
Yeah. I know there's like a zero entropy guy on YouTube also who's doing it for 40 years. And, there's probably some old people that started Atkins like 40 years ago and are now in their 70s and 80s and don't use social media and don't know all this is going on,
Yeah.
Like, how can we find those people?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like I want to do metabolome research, see kind of, like the long-term health. Maybe I want to check if the RDAs are really accurate.
Mm-hmm. They're not.
If you're
Spoiler.
Ketogenic.
Spoiler, they're not.
If you're in a ketogenic metabolism, or you're switching into Randall cycle, or eating all this fiber that's maybe we could have a different RDA for that.
Maybe.
And I mean,
I'll tell you what I'm seeing here, Travis. I'm seeing a bit of myself in you at your age and stage now, and the excitement about I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do the other thing. I don't want to piss on your chips at all, but what happens is like quarter of a century later, 20, 25 years later, whatever, 26 years later, you'll end up swearing at people on the internet too. That's how it is.
I already do that. I just don't do it as publicly as you do.
Yeah. And you too will be a sad, angry old man, apparently. Whatever.
I'm already a third of the way to my centenarian date, so I don't know. I'm hopeful. I think I'm glad that the anecdotes keep pouring in and the doctors are getting behind it. And my website has. I made a list of notable meat nutritionists. That's what I call them, of kind of people that support the carnivore diet, or even if they don't do it themselves, at least they like tell it to their patients as a possibility.
Awesome.
But it's like, can I get money from the meat industry maybe to fund studies like this that say, you can actually survive on meat alone, kind of like Stephenson did originally. He got a grant from the American Meat Science Association back in 1928 and kind of made that whole study happen. And, like, why can't we do the same thing for, 150 or 300 people? And, I mean, I'm also really interested in, understanding more about evolution and genetics and the transcriptome and, seeing how our cells react to what we eat. One thing that drives me crazy is like we don't even have good measurements of what the stomach pH is for other great apes, like bonobos and chimpanzees. And nowadays you can't do any research in them because it's all ethically barred.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like the long-term studies, could we put people on, death row or life in prison on long-term studies? But no, the IRB is also kind of banned prisoner research in a lot of ways. So because you're kind of taking advantage of a vulnerable population.
Yeah.
But like maybe you could kind of say like, we'll feed you steak for the rest of your life. Is that really so bad? Maybe people will do it, or we'll get ethical problems from that. cat just ran by me.
Yes, I wondered. That's a fast something, a furry thing. Good. Yeah, no, look, I absolutely support the enthusiasm, and I applaud the enthusiasm. I hope that you are one of those few scientists who is going to be able to make that one difference in the world. I really, I'm not suggesting to you that it's impossible that you might. I'm just saying it's unlikely, and be ready to be a grumpy old man swearing at people on the internet by the end of it. Yeah, no, I absolutely applaud what you're doing. It's been fantastic talking with you, Travis. It's heartening that there are what I will refer to as young people like yourself, because I'm such an old, crusty old man these days, who are, who do have the energy for this and who are doing stuff and who are going to make a difference sociologically, if nothing else. I think you might make a difference scientifically as well. I'm not suggesting that you won't. If people want to know where to find you, how to get hold of you, and tell us all about your social media and all of that sort of stuff, where do people find you?
Yeah, so my Twitter, I've been basically building like a new account. It's Meatrition.com on Twitter, but you can also get me at Travis_Statham. I'm on Facebook, and then you can also check out my website. It's www.meatrition.com. It's just spelled like nutrition, but with meat in the front. I'm also on Reddit. I sometimes post like anti-vegan studies on our science, and then I get thousands of vegans yelling at me. But yeah, check out my website. It's really meant for like the ultra skeptics, the people with lots of time. I have a plethora of books around me that I've been reading and going through and making collections out of, and I really just want to expose all this science, get more people interested, and maybe you can come and study the carnivore diet at Utah when I become a PI in a few years or whenever that works out.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. All right. If you flick me all those details in an email or something, Travis, we'll put them underneath the video in the show notes so that people can go straight to those and click straight on them and whatever else. Thank you for your valuable time. It's been a pleasure. It's always good to talk to and to cross-pollinate with others who are right thinking. I'll be in touch about the World Carnivore Tribe in the background too, by the way. Okay. Basically, I think the problem was that somebody barred and unmembershiped me because I was self-promoting on there. Well, that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I think that's a policy that needs looking at in all of these Facebook groups. Don't promote yourself. Well, how do people find out about, if you're not allowed to promote yourself or promote what you're doing? This group should be the be-all and end-all of everything. Don't talk about other groups or other places or other platforms here. Get a grip, please. Right, enough said. Okay, good to talk to you, man. And we'll be in touch in the background as well, of course. And if you need any kind of input or advice into anything scientifically or whatever, do sing out, and I'll give you my opinion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bart.
Oh, my man, pleasure. Cool.
Thanks.
All right,
bye.
See ya.